"Are you waiting for someone, sweetheart?" The question came gently, warm as the afternoon sun that filtered through the branches of Crescent Park. Thomas Grant, dressed in a crisp gray blazer, stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching the little girl who sat alone on a red and white checkered blanket spread neatly across the grass. The girl, no older than 6, looked up slowly. Her eyes were deep, dark, and surprisingly calm. She blinked once, then offered a polite, practiced smile. "No, sir. They're already here," she said, gesturing to the empty spots around her. Thomas looked. 4 plastic plates had been set out with care, each one spotless. No food, no cups, no napkins, and yet her tone held certainty. It wasn't play, it was ritual. He tilted his head, curious. "May I ask who they are?" The girl adjusted one of the plates. "That one's Mama's. That one's Mr. Button's. He's my rabbit, but he don't eat much. And over there's Uncle Ray. He's loud, but funny." Thomas crouched, trying not to wrinkle his trousers. "What about this seat? That's mine, but I can scoot over," she said, making room on the blanket. "You can sit where Mr. Buttons was. He won't mind." Thomas smiled, genuinely this time. "I wouldn't want to steal his seat. It's okay. He already had his turn." She patted the spot next to her. "I'm Anna. I'm 6 3/4. He chuckled. "That's very specific." "I'm growing," she said matter-of-factly. "Mama says my brain is going to be too big for my head soon." Thomas lowered himself to the grass, stretching his legs. "Nice to meet you, Anna. I'm Thomas." "Hi, Mr. Thomas." The breeze stirred the fringe of her blanket. Above them, the trees rustled, their leaves whispering secrets that only quiet people could hear. "So," he said, glancing again at the empty plates, "what's for lunch?" Anna straightened up. "Fried chicken, mac and cheese, peach cobbler, and lemonade." "That's quite the spread. It's our favorite." She paused, then added softly, "Well, it was. Now Mama don't eat much." Thomas looked at the empty plate she'd pointed to earlier, Mama's plate. The way Anna's voice changed when she said that. It wasn't sorrowful. It was protective. "She couldn't come today?" he asked. "No, sir. She's tired. Real tired." Anna picked up a plastic spoon and stirred the invisible food on her plate. "So I came here and brought her with me. Pretend. Style." Thomas watched her closely. Her posture, her voice. The way she moved, it wasn't a child playing. It was a child coping. "Do you two come here often?" he asked. Anna nodded. "When she felt better, we'd come on Sundays. She likes the trees. Says they remind her of Georgia, where she was born." "She from the South?" "Yep. Peachtree something. She tells stories about lightning bugs and porch swings. I don't know what a porch swing island. You'll learn." She smiled. "You talk nice for a grown-up." "Thank you. You talk nice for someone almost 7. Anna giggled. "Mama says I talk too much. But only when I'm nervous." "Are you nervous now?" "No, sir. I like you. You remind me of that man in the news who helped build the big hospital." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "You mean the new children's wing at Street Vincent's?" "Yeah, that was you?" "It might have been," he said modestly. Anna's eyes widened. "Mama said you were the good kind of rich." Thomas tried not to react, but the words struck somewhere deep. "What makes someone the good kind?" he asked. Anna shrugged. "They help quiet." Thomas looked away, toward the horizon. That was the kind of truth only a child could say out loud. After a few minutes, she pulled out a crumpled napkin and unfolded it carefully. It had a short note written in purple crayon. He watched her slide it gently under the empty plate in front of her. "What's that?" he asked. "My message to Mama," she said, not looking up. "I always write one. Then, when I get home, I read it to her, so she knows what we did today." Thomas leaned in slightly. "Can I ask what it says?" She hesitated, then nodded. "It says, 'Dear Mama, the sun was real warm today. Mr. Thomas came to our picnic. He talks nice. I gave you the last peach cobbler, even though Uncle Ray wanted it. Love.'" Anna, if this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. We would love to hear your thoughts. Make sure to like this video and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next story we bring to life. He swallowed the tightness in his throat. That's a beautiful message. She likes when I tell her the smells too, Anna said brightly. I say it smelled like sunshine and chicken grease. Thomas laughed, soft and low. Those are good smells. Yup. She began packing up the blanket. The ritual was complete. Are you walking home alone? He asked. She nodded. We live on Maple Street, just 2 blocks. I know all the turns. He stood. Would you mind if I walk you to the edge of the park? She thought for a moment. Only if you promise not to tell Mama. She'll say I'm not being brave enough. He placed a hand over his heart. Scout's honor. They walked side by side to the sidewalk. At the edge, Anna turned and gave him a small wave. Thanks for coming to the picnic, Mr. Thomas. You can come again next time if you want. I'd like that very much. She smiled, then skipped off down the block, the plastic plates clattering gently in her bag, beads in her braids clicking like wind chimes. Thomas stood there until she disappeared around the corner. When he looked down, he realized she had forgotten the napkin note. It had fluttered free from under the plate. He picked it up, unfolded it, and read her words again. This time, slower. Dear Mama, the sun was real warm today. Mr. Thomas came to our picnic. He talks nice. I gave you the last peach cobbler, even though Uncle Ray wanted it. Love, Anna. He folded the note, placed it gently in his coat pocket, and walked back through the park. 4 empty plates, 1 forgotten note. But the weight in his chest, that was real. Thomas Grant couldn't stop thinking about the girl. Even as the limo slid through midtown traffic, windows rolled up, shielding him from the noise of the city. His mind was still back at Crescent Park, specifically on a checkered picnic blanket with 4 empty plates and 1 folded napkin, now tucked into the inside pocket of his blazer. He had canceled another meeting, his 3rd that week. His assistant, Peter, had left 3 voicemails already. There was supposed to be a quarterly investor call, a new AI prototype to review, a feature in Forbes. But all of it had suddenly lost its urgency, because somewhere, a little girl named Anna had made room for him at her table. He turned the napkin over in his hand again, tracing the soft indentations of her crayon words. Mr. Thomas came to our picnic. He talks nice. Those last 3 words echoed in his chest. When the limo stopped outside his penthouse, Thomas didn't go inside. Instead, he walked something he hadn't done in months without security detail. A simple stroll down Maple Street, 2 blocks from the park, just as she'd said. He looked for signs of her, though he didn't quite know what he expected. Bicycles on porches, chalk drawings, a door slightly ajar with laughter spilling out. What he found was quieter, an aging brick apartment complex, the kind built in the 60s and never updated since. A cracked walkway, faded paint, a single name stenciled in worn letters by the buzzer. Davis? See, that must be her mother. Carla. He didn't press the buzzer. He stood across the street, watching the front entrance. Part of him felt foolish. This wasn't his business. He didn't know them. He had no right. But the other part, the part that remembered sleeping on church steps at 13, told him to stay just a minute longer. A young boy zipped past on a scooter, and the sound startled him out of his thoughts. Thomas sighed, adjusted his blazer, and turned to go. But as he stepped off the curb, a voice called out from behind. You looking for someone? He turned. An older woman stood on the stoop, arms crossed, eyes sharp behind thick glasses. Her name tag read, Miss Roberta, building supervisor. Not exactly, he said. I met a little girl today. Anna. She said she lives around here. Miss Roberta's expression softened just a touch. Anna Davis? Sweet child. Talks like a grown-up in a child's coat. That's the one. You a relative? No, Thomas replied. Just someone she invited to lunch. Roberta laughed once, a dry, surprised sound. She got you too, huh? He smiled. I suppose as she did. Well, she's not home now. Carla, her mom, had a rough night. Lupus flare-up. Ambulance came early this morning. Anna went with her. Thomas felt a pinch in his chest. Are they all right? She's stable, last I heard. But they don't let kids stay too long at the hospital. Social services probably picked her up for the afternoon. He nodded, unsure of what to say next. You a churchman? Roberta asked suddenly. He blinked. Not lately. She always prays over them plates, you know. Even when they're empty. Her voice cracked just a little. Says God can fill what the world forgets. Thomas looked down at his shoes. That familiar sting again, like shame mixed with gratitude. Thank you, he said, offering a small nod. She's got a birthday coming up. Turns 7 next month, Roberta added. Carla's been saving bottle caps for weeks, trying to get her a small cake. Thomas stood there a moment longer, the gears already turning in his mind. When he returned to his penthouse, he didn't go to the kitchen or the study. He walked straight to his office, pulled open the bottom drawer of his desk, and removed a thick, leather-bound notebook, his mother's. She'd kept it through all their moves, all the years of scraping by. In it, she'd written prayers, recipes, rent due dates, and little phrases that had guided him through his darkest hours. On one page she had written, "If you ever forget where you came from, son, don't come looking for me." He hadn't looked at that notebook in over a decade. That night, instead of sleeping, he made calls. Quiet ones. To friends. To foundations. To his personal legal team. He asked about Carla Davis. What kind of insurance coverage she might qualify for. What kind of housing vouchers could be expedited. What school Anna might attend. Everything. He wanted to know everything, but he told no one why. The next morning, Thomas returned to Crescent Park. This time, with a real basket. Real food. Mac and cheese. Fried chicken. Lemonade. Peach cobbler. Enough for 4. He laid it out exactly as Anna had. Same blanket. Same spot under the willow tree. Then he waited. The wind rustled the leaves above. A dog barked in the distance. Children laughed somewhere beyond the hill. Then footsteps. Anna appeared, hair freshly braided, wearing a worn yellow dress. A woman walked beside her slowly, leaning on a cane. Carla. Pale, tired, but proud. Anna stopped, eyes wide as saucers. Mr. Thomas? He stood. You said I could come again. Anna blinked, then broke into a run. You brought cobbler? Carla reached them moments later, her voice soft and wary. Sir, I'm not sure what this island. Thomas offered his hand. Ma'am, I know this is unusual, but your daughter invited me. And when someone invites you to the table, the least you can do is bring something to share. Carla studied him, then looked at her daughter now seated on the blanket, already pointing out who would sit where. She sighed, then slowly lowered herself onto the grass. I don't accept charity, she said. It's not charity, Thomas replied. It's dessert. Carla let out a breath, half a laugh, half a warning. You're lucky she likes you. I'm lucky she saw me, he said quietly. They sat together, eating, talking, pretending nothing was broken. And for a little while, nothing was. At the end of the meal, Anna looked at her mom and said, Today's picnic was even better than pretend. Thomas smiled at the girl across from him, her plate finally full. Next time, she whispered. We should invite more people, and Thomas nodded. Not yet knowing just how big that table would become. That night, Thomas sat alone in his penthouse with the city glowing below him like a galaxy trapped in glass. The dishes from the picnic had been washed and returned to the basket, which now sat neatly by the door, as if waiting for the next invitation. But Thomas couldn't sleep. He kept reaching into his blazer pocket, pulling out the folded napkin Anna's note to her mother from the first day they met. He'd read it at least a dozen times. The innocence in her words, the deliberate care she'd put into writing that tiny letter each time he read it, it chipped away at something calcified inside him. He turned it over again, this time to the blank side. His fingers hovered as if he might write something back. But what could he possibly say that would matter? The next morning, he called Peter, his assistant. I need you to find everything you can on Carla Davis and her daughter, Anna, Thomas said. Peter hesitated on the line. Sir, you want a full background check on a child? I want to understand how a mother with lupus and no income is raising a daughter like that in a city like this. Peter didn't ask more. He knew better. Later that day, a neatly organized file landed in Thomas's inbox. He opened it slowly, half dreading what he might read. Carla Davis, 38. Former home health aide. Diagnosed with systemic lupus erythematosus at 35. No longer able to work full-time. No partner listed on any official records. Rent payments 3 months behind. Medical debt mounting. No active insurance. Emergency Medicaid pending review. Anna Davis. Born at Harlem Hospital. No behavioral issues on record. Attends PS 116. Excellent attendance. Known for being imaginative and polite. Thomas leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples. This wasn't a one-time act of kindness anymore. It was a fork in the road. He could walk away, say he'd done something nice, feel good about it and forget. Or he could stay involved. Really involved. He already knew which path he'd take. The harder one. By late afternoon, he was in the back seat of a black SUV, watching the buildings change from steel and glass towers to peeling brick tenements. They stopped in front of the Davis apartment building. This time, he didn't wait across the street. Miss Roberta, the building supervisor, was sweeping the front step. She looked up as he approached. You again, she said, with the smallest of smirks. I was hoping to speak with Carla. She's inside. Bit better today. Anna's doing her homework. Want me to let her know you're here? Thomas nodded. Please. A few minutes later, Carla opened the door, leaning against the frame, her face drawn but curious. I'm not used to rich folks knocking twice, she said. Thomas offered a respectful smile. I'm not used to being invited to picnics. Oh, she stepped aside, and he entered their small living room. The place was clean, but modest. A folding table served as a dining area. A few paper butterflies decorated the wall, clearly Anna's handiwork. Anna herself sat cross-legged on the floor, crayons scattered around her. She looked up and beamed. Mr. Thomas, did you come for another picnic? Not today, he chuckled. Today I came to say thank you. And maybe ask for something. Carla raised an eyebrow. Ask what? Thomas turned to her, serious now. Let me help. With what exactly? Medical expenses, housing support, school tuition, whatever you need. Carla's smile faded. She crossed her arms. You think we're a charity case? No, he said. I think you're a hero raising one of the most extraordinary kids I've ever met. Under circumstances no one should have to face alone. There was a pause. I don't want pity, she said firmly. You won't get any, Thomas replied just as firmly. What you'll get is partnership. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. Inside were 3 pages, nothing legally binding, just proposals. Discreet ways he could support them through one of his foundations. Anonymous donations, rent assistance, a private clinic that would treat her lupus with dignity. Carla looked at the papers, then back at him. Why? She asked. Why us? Thomas exhaled. Because when a little girl pretends to host a feast with empty plates just to make her mother smile, something's gone very wrong in the world. And if someone like me can't do something about that, then what the hell is the point of having money? Anna looked between the 2 adults, her eyes wide. Mama, he talks like one of the good guys in your stories. Carla looked at her daughter, then at Thomas. Her face softened. I'll think about it, she said. That's all I ask. Thomas stood, nodded to Anna, and headed toward the door. Before he left, he paused and turned back. There's one more thing. He reached into his pocket and handed Carla the napkin. I believe this belongs to you. Carla took it, puzzled. She unfolded it and read Anna's handwriting. Her lips trembled. She brought the napkin to her chest and sat slowly on the couch. She leaves these everywhere, she whispered, to remind me we're okay. She reminds me too, Thomas said softly. Then he let himself out. Outside, the late sun poured gold over the sidewalk. Thomas didn't get into his car right away. He walked down the block, taking in the neighborhood. A group of kids played jump rope. An older man sat on a stoop, humming an old Marvin Gaye tune. The city was still broken, but it was also still breathing. As he reached the corner, his phone rang. It was Peter. "Sir, about that birthday party you mentioned. Should I begin making arrangements?" Thomas stopped walking. "Yes," he said. "But not a party." "No?" "A celebration," Thomas replied. "We're going to make sure that little girl never has to eat imaginary peach cobbler again." He hung up the phone and looked back at the apartment building, small, weathered, brave. In a world full of empty plates, Anna had given him a seat at a table that truly mattered. And he wasn't about to leave it. 3 weeks passed, and everything quietly changed. From the outside, it looked like nothing had shifted. The red bricks of the Davis apartment remained chipped. The stairwell still creaked on every second step, and Carla still woke with aching joints every morning before the sun rose. But behind the door of apartment 3B, hope had begun to take up space. Thanks to Thomas's quiet intervention, Carla's medications were now delivered weekly from a private clinic in the Upper West Side, no more waiting 10 hours in emergency rooms. Rent had been discreetly paid through a foundation that bore no flashy name, and Anna, though unaware of the details, could feel the difference. Her mother smiled more. That alone made the world feel new. Thomas, meanwhile, found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, looking forward to Saturdays. Every weekend, he returned to Crescent Park with a real picnic, one filled with food, and more importantly, stories. Anna made sure of it. She insisted every guest be given a name and a backstory. Mr. Buttons was now a retired jazz musician from New Orleans. Uncle Ray was a former astronaut who had landed on a cheese moon. And Thomas? He was dubbed Sir Thomas of Biscuitshire, knighted for services in peach cobbler preservation. Each time he showed up, the picnic grew. First it was just him, Anna, and Carla. Then came Roberta, who brought sweet tea and sharp opinions. A young teacher from the school joined after hearing about the little girl with the imaginary feasts. By the 5th Saturday, a small community had formed, drawn, not by handouts, but by something rarer. Belonging. Thomas often stayed afterward to help clean up. And on one such afternoon, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched long across the park, Anna tugged at his sleeve. "Mr. Thomas," she whispered, as if sharing a secret. "Yes, Lady Anna," he replied, playing along. "Do you see them too?" He looked around. The park was mostly empty now, except for Roberta snoring gently on a bench and a few kids kicking a soccer ball far off. "See who?" She pointed to the blanket. To the empty plates, she still insisted on setting one for her father she'd never known. One for Big Nana, who had passed when Anna was 2, and one she never named but always said was for someone lost. Thomas followed her gaze, then looked back at her. "No," he said honestly, "but I feel them." Anna smiled. "Me too." That night, Thomas sat in his penthouse and stared at a sheet of paper. Across the top, in his neat handwriting, were the words, "Invisible Guests Initiative." He wasn't sure what it would become, but the idea rooted deep. A program that would fund community meals in low-income neighborhoods, yes, but more than that. It would restore dignity. Let people serve, not be served. Let them host, even if their plates were empty. Because Anna had taught him that everyone deserves a seat at the table. Even the ones no one else sees. The following Monday, Thomas returned to the Davis apartment with something different. Not food. Not gifts. A question. When Carla opened the door, her face brightened with cautious warmth. "I don't have sweet tea today," she warned. "That's all right," Thomas said. "I came with a proposition." He stepped inside, pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket, and laid it on the table. A community event, not a fundraiser, a gathering, a celebration. In honor of Anna's 7th birthday. Carla raised an eyebrow. "You planning to rent out Yankee Stadium or something?" He laughed. "Just the community center on 8th. We'll keep it close, personal. But I want you and Anna to plan it with my help." Carla studied the proposal. Her fingers trembled slightly. "You want me to be in charge of this? I want you to host it. Your way." The same way Anna hosts her picnics with heart, and with people who feel like family, even if they're strangers. Carla swallowed hard. It's been a long time since anyone trusted me with something big. Thomas leaned in. Then it's long overdue. 2 weeks later, flyers went up. Everyone has a seat. Community celebration, hosted by Carla and Anna Davis. No entry fee, no dress code, just stories, food, and music. And space, plenty of space for invisible guests. The night before the event, Anna couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, legs kicking excitedly beneath the covers. "Mama," she whispered. "What if nobody comes?" Carla, lying beside her, ran a hand over her daughter's hair. "Baby, even if not a soul shows up, we'll still be together." "That's more than enough." Anna nodded slowly, then asked, "Can Mr. Thomas sit next to you tomorrow?" Carla smiled. "He can sit wherever he wants." He earned that. And Thomas? He wasn't sleeping either. He stood in his walk-in closet, sorting through his suits, feeling oddly nervous. It wasn't a business pitch. There were no investors to impress, no cameras, just people. Real ones. The kind who'd see him not as a CEO, but as a man lucky enough to be invited back again and again to a little girl's table. The celebration would begin at noon, and for the first time in years, Thomas felt like he was truly preparing for something that mattered. By 11:30, the community center on 8th Street was already buzzing. The air inside was thick with the smell of collard greens, fresh cornbread, and peach cobbler cooling on folding tables. Rows of mismatched chairs lined up beneath strings of paper butterflies and colored balloons, carefully taped to the wall by Anna, and a handful of helpful volunteers from the building. A soft Motown playlist played in the background, warming the space with nostalgic rhythm. Carla stood near the punch bowl, her hair pressed and styled, her dress a modest blue number she hadn't worn since her sister's wedding. There was a spark in her eye, a spark dulled for years by fatigue, medical appointments, and unpaid bills. Today, it had returned. She glanced at her daughter, who twirled nearby in a thrifted yellow dress with new white lace sewn onto the hem. Anna was radiant, her cheeks glowing. A birthday girl unaware that the room full of people had come not just for cake, but for her spirit, for the way she made space for others, even imaginary ones. At exactly noon, Thomas walked through the double doors. No entourage, no camera crew. Just him, holding a single plate, wrapped in foil. Anna spotted him instantly. "Sir Thomas," she shouted. Running across the room, he knelt down, laughing as she threw her arms around his neck. "Happy birthday, Lady Anna," he whispered. She pulled back, examining the foil. "What's that?" "Peach cobbler. Made it myself. Or at least, I stirred it while someone else did all the hard parts." She grinned. "Then you get to sit at the important table." He followed her through the crowd, where he was greeted with nods, pats on the back, and warm handshakes. People didn't see a billionaire here, they saw the man who showed up when it counted. At the center of the room sat a long table covered in a floral cloth. On it were plates for the guests of honor: Anna, Carla, Roberta, 2 neighborhood kids Anna had invited from school, and 1 empty seat unmarked, but deliberate. "That's for Big Nana," Anna whispered. She always said birthdays are for remembering, not just eating. Thomas nodded solemnly. "Then it's perfect." As people settled in, Carla stepped forward and clinked a spoon gently against her cup. The room hushed. "Before we eat," she began, voice firm but full of warmth, "I just want to say thank you. Not just for being here, but for seeing us, for seeing my daughter not as someone poor or pitiful, but as a person. A little girl with big dreams and a whole lot of heart." Applause followed. Thomas watched her with quiet admiration. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was leading. Carla continued. "Today's about community, about pulling up a chair, whether you were invited formally or just wandered in hungry. Anna believes there's always one more seat at the table. So we set a few extra. Around the room, folding chairs waited, some occupied, some still empty. And yet, those empty ones didn't feel lonely. They felt sacred, saved for those who couldn't be there, or those who hadn't found the courage to show up yet. As food was served, laughter replaced silence. Plates clinked, napkins unfolded. Children ran under tables while grandparents shared stories over cornbread. It wasn't a gala. It wasn't polished. It was something better. Real. Thomas sat beside Anna, who was chewing happily on a drumstick. She looked at him and asked, "Do rich people get parties like this?" "Sometimes," he said. "But do they have imaginary guests?" He smiled. "I doubt it." She leaned in. "That's why they're not as fun." Thomas chuckled. "You might be right." Midway through the meal, a boy about Anna's age approached. His shirt was 2 sizes too small, his shoes taped at the sides. He held a folded napkin in his hand. "Is it okay if I give this to the empty chair?" he asked shyly. Anna stood and nodded. "Of course. She'll like that." The boy carefully placed the napkin on the empty plate, then backed away as if he touched something holy. Thomas leaned toward Carla. "Did you see that?" She wiped her eyes. "I saw it. Every week she does this, and now they're doing it too. She started something. She reminded people," Carla said, "of what it means to belong." The party rolled on for hours. People who had never met were now playing dominoes and sharing photos of grandkids. A man with a harmonica started playing "Lean on Me," and the room slowly joined in. Near the end, Anna stood up on a chair. Her voice, though small, silenced the room. "I want to say thank you to everybody who came," she said, "and to my mama, who makes sick look strong, and to Mr. Thomas, who brings real peach cobbler, even though pretend ones taste better sometimes." Laughter echoed gently, but mostly, she continued, "I want to thank the people we don't see, like Big Nana, or Daddy, who I think watches from the sky, or all the folks who got no one to talk to. I see you. We all do, and you can sit here any time." A pause. No one moved. Then applause, thunderous and long. Thomas stood last. Not because he was hesitant, but because he didn't want the moment to end. That night, after the chairs were folded and the last hugs exchanged, Carla and Anna walked Thomas to his car. "You did something today," Carla said softly, "and not just for us." Thomas shook his head. "It was her. She built the table. I just found a seat." Anna yawned, leaning against her mother's side. "Next time," she mumbled. "We need a bigger table." Thomas smiled down at her. "We'll build one." As he drove away, napkin still folded in his coat pocket, he looked back once more. Through the rearview mirror, he saw it, a little girl waving goodbye to no one and everyone all at once. And behind her, just for a moment, it looked like all the empty seats were finally full. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and a soft drizzle that kissed the windows of every building on 8th Street. The community center was quiet again. Folding tables stacked, floors swept clean, balloons slowly deflating in corners like tired party guests who'd danced too long. But the air held something new now, a lingering warmth, like a song half sung still echoing in the walls. Carla sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea as she read a note Anna had scribbled in purple marker. "Dear Big Nana, I hope you liked the cornbread. We saved you a seat like always. Love, Anna." She smiled through tired eyes. The weekend had worn her body down, but her spirit had never stood taller. A knock on the door startled her. It was early. She opened it to find Miss Roberta, her gray curls pulled back, her cardigan peppered with lint and wisdom. "You got a visitor," Roberta said, with her signature half-frown. "Says she's press." Carla's heart skipped. "Press?" Before she could say more, a woman appeared behind Roberta, umbrella dripping. "Good morning, Miss Davis. I'm Lila Monroe with Channel 8. I was at the community center Saturday. I saw everything." Carla blinked. "It wasn't meant for cameras." "I know," Lila said gently. "That's why it mattered." Roberta nodded toward the stairs. "I'll be downstairs if she tries to sell your story to Netflix." Carla ushered Lila in and offered her a towel. "We don't have much space." "But you're welcome. I won't take long," Lila said. "I just wanted to ask a few things. What you and your daughter did, it's different. It's not a charity event. It's something else. Can you tell me why you started it?" Carla sat slowly, wrapping her robe tighter around her shoulders. "We didn't start anything," she said. We just kept showing up, even when no one else did. Lila scribbled something down. Anna used to ask me why no one ever came to our parties. I told her, sometimes people just forget to look. So she started saving them a seat just in case. Lila looked up, and Mr. Grant, what's his role in all this? Carla thought for a moment. He's not here to save us. He's here to listen, to eat, to remember how it feels to be seen. Lila set her notepad down, visibly moved. May I come to the next one? Carla smiled. Only if you bring something to share. Later that afternoon, Thomas received a call from his head of communications. Sir, there's a story circulating on local channels about the Davis family. It's gone semi-viral. People are calling your office asking if you're funding community tables. Thomas was at his desk, staring out at the skyline. Let them call, he said, but make sure we don't take credit. You don't want to issue a statement? No, I want them to talk about Anna, about what it means to make room. He hung up and pulled open the top drawer of his desk. Inside was a growing stack of napkin notes, each one Anna had let him keep. Crayon-written letters to invisible guests, to her mother, sometimes to the moon. He picked up the latest one. It read, Dear Mr. Thomas, today we made people feel real. That's better than pretend. That sentence stayed with him all day. Meanwhile, word of the birthday gathering spread not because of slick marketing, but because people talked. At barbershops and laundromats, in church basements and waiting rooms, she made space for me, one woman told her pastor. It felt like coming home, a veteran said at a VA support group. I didn't even get a plate, said one man outside the bus stop, but I left full. A movement was starting, quiet, warm, and deeply rooted. Neighborhoods that hadn't seen joy in years were now organizing open table days inspired by Anna's idea. No rules. Just bring what you can. Leave with more than food. But not everyone welcomed the change. That Thursday, while Thomas met with legal teams about expanding the initiative, his phone buzzed with a new name. Richard Lansing. A major developer with a polished smile and an empty conscience. Thomas, Richard said over speakerphone, we've got concerns. We being a few of your board members, investors, people wondering why a man like you is spending so much time handing out chicken legs at picnic tables. Thomas let the silence stretch. Richard continued, listen, I get it. It's sweet. It makes for a nice story. But there's a reason people like us write checks and don't get our hands dirty. You're crossing lines, political ones, cultural ones. Thomas spoke evenly. The only line I crossed was from silence into service. Richard laughed, but it lacked humor. You're risking your image. I'm rebuilding it. People don't want real, they want safe. I'm not for sale, Richard. He hung up. That evening, Thomas returned to Crescent Park. The air was cooler now, summer gently giving way to fall. Leaves tumbled like forgotten memories across the grass. Anna was already there, setting out plates. Where's Mr. Buttons today? Thomas asked as he sat beside her. He's mad I let someone sit in his seat last time, she whispered. But he'll get over it. They laughed. Then Anna turned serious. Are people mad at you? Thomas looked at her, surprised. Why do you ask? Moma got a letter today. Said we should stop making a fuss. That real change don't come from paper plates. Thomas felt a slow heat rise in his chest. Who sent it? Anna shrugged. Didn't say. Just typed words, but Mama threw it away. Thomas stared at the horizon. Do you think we're making trouble? Anna asked. Quieter now. He took a long breath. No, sweetheart. We're making room. And some people don't like that. She reached into her pocket and handed him a napkin, this one still blank. I didn't know what to write today, she said. Thomas took it gently, held it for a second, and then began to write, slowly, carefully. When he was done, he handed it back. Anna read it out loud. Dear world, there's more than enough if we stop pretending there isn't. Love, everyone who was ever left out. She looked up at him. That's a good one. Then let's make sure it's not the last. They sat together in the growing twilight, two unlikely companions at a picnic that had long stopped being pretend. And somewhere nearby, under the willow trees, the wind carried their whispers forward. The following week began with a phone call from City Hall. Carla nearly dropped the mug she was washing when she picked up the landline and heard the words, "Office of the Deputy Mayor." The woman on the line was polite but direct. They were inviting Carla and her daughter to speak at the city's annual Voices of the People Forum. A quiet, formal civic event that usually came and went without much fanfare. But this year, after Lila Monroe's story aired, the mayor's office had taken notice. They wanted to spotlight stories of grassroots hope. "We'd like Anna to say a few words," the woman said. "And if you're willing, Miss Davis, a short reflection on what this movement means to your community." Carla was speechless. The last time anyone from the city called her, it was a collections officer. Now they wanted her on stage. When she hung up, Anna was crouched behind the couch, pretending to read to a row of dolls. "Baby," Carla said, trying to sound calm, "how do you feel about talking into a microphone?" Anna looked up wide-eyed. "Like singing? More like telling a story." "Your story." Anna shrugged with her usual brave nonchalance. "Can I wear my yellow dress?" "Of course you can." By Thursday afternoon, word had already made its way through the neighborhood. Miss Roberta was the first to react. She marched upstairs with her good pearls in one hand and a lipstick the color of defiance in the other. "You're gonna wear these," she declared, "and you're gonna walk into that building like you own the whole damn block." Carla smiled and took both items. Thomas, meanwhile, had been sitting in his office overlooking Midtown when Peter entered quietly. "There's something you should know," he said, holding out a folded newspaper. On the cover was a photo of Anna and Carla at the community center. Arms around each other, confetti still in Anna's hair. The headline read, "The Girl Who Set the Table and Changed a City." Thomas studied the image. "They've been invited to City Hall," Peter added. "I know," Thomas replied. "I pulled the strings." Peter smiled faintly. "Of course you did." The forum was held in a wood-paneled room that smelled faintly of polished oak and bureaucracy. A podium stood at the front, flanked by 2 flags, and rows of folding chairs filled up with city officials, nonprofit leaders, and the occasional curious citizen. Carla and Anna sat in the front row, nervously holding hands. Carla wore Roberta's pearls and a new blouse Thomas had sent on behalf of Sir Biscuitshire. Anna's yellow dress had been freshly pressed, her shoes cleaned and laced with white ribbon. Thomas arrived quietly and took a seat 3 rows back. He didn't want the spotlight. He just wanted to be there when Anna stood tall. When the moderator finally called their names, Carla stood first, helping Anna up the steps. The crowd clapped polite, uncertain, curious. Carla spoke with measured confidence. "I'm not a politician," she began. "I'm not a community organizer. I'm a mother with lupus, overdue bills, and a daughter who believes in invisible people." There were a few soft chuckles. She smiled. "But what I've learned, what Anna has taught me, is that invisible doesn't mean imaginary. It just means forgotten, ignored. And sometimes, all it takes to bring someone back into view is to set a plate for them, even an empty one." The room was quiet now, the kind of quiet that leans forward to listen. She turned to Anna. "My daughter would like to say something too." Anna approached the podium, chin barely reaching the microphone. Her voice was soft but unwavering. "Hi, my name is Anna Davis. I'm 7, and I like making space." She paused, glancing at her mother, then continued. "Sometimes, people don't see other people, not because they're mean, but because they forget to look. So I started setting plates. For the people we miss. For the ones who are tired, or sad, or gone." She looked around the room, then smiled. "If we make the table big enough, nobody has to eat alone." The applause began slowly, then built into something real. Standing ovation, not out of politeness, but out of recognition. Out of awe. Thomas stood too, clapping with the others, his heart tight in his chest. After the event, reporters tried to swarm them. City officials extended business cards. One senator asked to take a photo. But Carla held Anna's hand tightly and moved through the crowd with quiet dignity. Outside, the wind carried the chill of October. As they stepped down the marble stairs, Thomas was waiting by the curb. "You were brilliant," he said to Anna. She beamed. Did you hear me talk about the empty seats? I did, and so did the whole city. Carla raised an eyebrow. You knew about this? I might have nudged a few people. Carla laughed. You nudged the government? Thomas shrugged. Well, I figured if they were going to spend our taxes on microphones and stages, they might as well hear something worth listening to. Just then, Anna tugged on his coat. We forgot something, she whispered. What's that? The empty chair. Thomas looked up the stairs to the grand chamber behind them. The image of the stage flashed in his mind, the flags, the microphones, the officials in suits, and no plate. No chair set aside for the ones who still go unseen. You're right, he said. We'll fix that next time. Anna nodded. Every room needs one. They walked together down the sidewalk. Thomas didn't rush. Carla didn't limp as much. And Anna, ever Anna, skipped 2 steps ahead. Already imagining the next table, the next feast, the next invitation. That night, she wrote another napkin note. Dear future, save us a seat. We're bringing more people with us this time. And she placed it gently on her windowsill, beneath the glow of the streetlight, where even invisible guests could read it. The following days brought a storm neither Carla nor Thomas expected, not the kind with thunder or rain, but with flashing headlines and unexpected phone calls. Anna's speech had caught fire online. By Sunday morning, the video of her standing at the podium had reached over 2 million views. Strangers left flowers at the steps of the Davis apartment building. An elementary school in Detroit sent a handmade banner reading, Anna's table has room for us all. Carla received a dozen voicemails from journalists, charities, even a documentary filmmaker. She ignored most of them. The attention was overwhelming, intrusive. What had begun as a gesture of love and imagination was now being spun into stories, sound bites, and summaries. That Monday, Thomas called. I'm sorry, he said, before she could even speak. I should have seen this coming. Carla sighed into the phone. It's not your fault. People are just hungry. Not for food, for something to believe in. And they think my daughter is it. She is something to believe in. Yeah, but she's also just a little girl who likes pink lemonade and pretend planets. She didn't ask for any of this. There was silence between them for a moment. I can take some of the weight off, Thomas said. I can handle the press. Redirect attention. Maybe. No, Carla interrupted gently. Let them come. But let's give them something real to leave with. That evening, Carla and Anna sat at their kitchen table, the same one that wobbled slightly if you leaned too hard to the left. Carla pulled out a worn notebook and opened to a fresh page. We're going to make a list, she said. Anna's eyes lit up. Of guests? No, baby. Of places with locked doors, schools, hospitals, boardrooms, churches, wherever people have been made to feel like they don't belong. And then we're going to figure out how to bring a chair to each one. Anna grinned. Even the big fancy places? Especially the big fancy places. And so the list began. Meanwhile, Thomas was doing something he hadn't done in years. He was planning a speech. Not for shareholders, not for investors, but for the annual Midtown Philanthropy Summit, an event he'd once seen as a formality, a performance of generosity for the wealthy and already powerful. But this year, he had something to say. When the morning of the summit arrived, Thomas stood backstage in a tailored gray suit, napkin in his pocket. Not just any napkin, Anna's note from the windowsill. The one she'd given him the night after City Hall. Dear future, save us a seat. We're bringing more people with us this time. The moderator introduced him with the usual accolades. Net worth, portfolio, board seats. But when Thomas took the stage, he didn't read from the prepared speech his team had emailed him at 4 a.m. He simply pulled the napkin from his pocket and held it up. This, he said, is the most important document I've read all year. There was silence, a few nervous coughs, one polite chuckle. It was written by a 7-year-old named Anna Davis. Maybe you've heard of her, maybe not. Either way, you need to. He paused, scanning the room. She reminded me of something we tend to forget in rooms like this, that the ones who need the table most are the ones who rarely get an invitation. And sometimes, they stop waiting. They build their own tables. set plates for people no one sees. And in doing so, they build community out of crumbs. Now, there was no coughing, just stillness. I've spent my career raising capital, but maybe it's time we start raising chairs. That line landed. Later, it would be quoted in articles, tweets, even etched into the glass of a new community center kitchen Thomas would fund quietly, in Anna's name. But in the moment, he didn't care about sound bites. He cared about the ripple. And it came. After the summit, several CEOs approached him not with compliments, but with questions, real ones. Could they adopt the Invisible Guests initiative in other cities? Could they reimagine their own foundations? Could they finally let go of the idea that service was something you delivered, instead of shared? Thomas didn't promise anything. He simply handed them blank napkins. "Start here," he said. "See who you've forgotten." That night, Thomas visited the Davis apartment again. He brought bagels and a notepad. Carla opened the door, saw the notepad, and smiled. Planning another speech? No, planning something bigger. They sat around the table, Thomas, Carla, and Anna, and mapped out the future of Anna's idea. Not a nonprofit, not a brand. A movement, small chapters, local ownership, no logos, no merchandise, just meals, shared space. A commitment to always leave one seat empty and one seat open. Anna suggested they call it the Open Table Project. Thomas agreed. "It's not about feeding mouths," he said. "It's about feeding belonging." By the end of the week, 10 neighborhoods across the city had hosted their first open table night. By the end of the month, there were 50. Not sponsored, not coordinated, just inspired. But not everyone was pleased. Late one night, Carla found a sealed envelope slid under her door. No return address, no note inside, just a single printed photo. It showed Anna on the steps of City Hall. A red circle had been drawn around her head. Carla froze. Her hands trembled as she called Thomas. When he answered, her voice was low and urgent. Someone's watching her. Thomas was already reaching for his coat. "I'm coming now." Anna was asleep when he arrived. Carla showed him the photo. "They're trying to scare us," she said, voice tight. Thomas studied it, jaw clenched. "Then they don't know who they're dealing with. We can't let her get hurt." "She won't," he promised. "Not on my watch." Carla nodded, trying to steady her breath. Thomas glanced toward the girl's bedroom, where Anna slept peacefully. One hand resting on a crayon. A paper plate beside her bed. "We brought people to the table," Carla whispered, "and now the ones who feed on silence want it back." Thomas folded the photo and tucked it into his coat. "Then we make the table louder. Because the doors may close, the threats may come, but the seat, Anna's seat, would stay open, and the world would have to reckon with that." The next morning arrived, shrouded in a heavy fog that seemed to wrap around the entire neighborhood like a warning. Carla stood at the window, arms folded, eyes sharp as she watched the street below. Nothing looked out of place, but everything felt different. It was like the moment before a thunderstorm, the hush, the tension, the weight in the air. She hadn't told Anna about the photo, not yet. Her daughter had already endured more than most grown adults, and Carla refused to let fear take root in that child's spirit. But as Anna hummed from her bedroom, dressing her teddy bear in a tutu, and setting out plates for another pretend breakfast, Carla knew things had changed. Thomas arrived just after 9, dressed not in his usual pressed suit, but in dark jeans and a gray hoodie. There was no car, no driver, just him, walking like any man trying to disappear in plain sight. "You came fast," Carla said, opening the door. "I didn't sleep," he replied. "I've already spoken to a friend in the security bureau. We're putting eyes on this building, round the clock. Discreet, but effective." She nodded. "Do you think it's Lansing?" Thomas didn't answer right away. "It could be, or someone working in his shadow. He's not the only one who feels threatened by what we're doing." Carla crossed her arms. "It's just a table." Thomas met her eyes. "That's what makes it dangerous." They sat at the kitchen table, Anna still singing softly in the other room, and opened a file folder Thomas brought. Inside were documents, permits, surveillance reports, Contact information for a private security team he trusted with his life. I want her protected, he said. Even when I'm not here. Especially then. Carla traced her finger along the edge of the folder. You really think it's going to get worse? I think it's already started. Later that afternoon, Thomas held a private meeting with Peter and 3 trusted members of his executive circle in a quiet office 2 floors below his usual workspace. We've received 3 anonymous threats to the invisible guests database, Peter reported. 2 phishing attempts, 1 denial of service attack. Someone's trying to access donor information. Maybe more. Any leads? Thomas asked. Peter hesitated. A pattern-matching firm traced the IP to a shell company in New Jersey. Guess who's on the board? Lansing, Thomas said. Bingo. Thomas stood, pacing slowly. I've tried to avoid a public confrontation, but he's not giving us a choice. If he's escalating, so are we. You want to go public? No, I want to go personal. Back in the neighborhood, Anna and Carla visited the small park 2 blocks away. It wasn't Crescent Park, it didn't have the same swing set or the willow tree Anna loved, but today, they needed somewhere quieter. Somewhere no one would expect them. Anna carried a folded napkin in her pocket, her newest letter. Carla noticed how tightly she held it. Want to read it to me? Anna shook her head. Not yet. It's not done. They sat on the bench near the faded mural that said, "Love lives here," the paint peeling like an old memory. Carla stared at the words, wondering how many people had walked past it and no longer believed it was true. Then, a figure appeared at the edge of the park. A man. Dressed like anyone. Too normal. Carla tensed. Anna, oblivious, began humming again. The man didn't come closer. Just stood for a moment, then turned and left. But Carla had seen enough. His gaze had lingered on her daughter 1 second too long. That night, she didn't sleep. Neither did Thomas. He spent the dark hours reviewing every connection Lansing had, every committee, real estate deal, shell company. He found patterns, names, networks, and something else. A proposed development plan, one that would tear down the entire Crescent Park neighborhood, label it unsustainable, and build luxury condos in its place. The plan was marked confidential. But Thomas had it now. He called Carla the next morning. They're not just coming for you, he said. They're coming for everyone in your building. Everyone who ever sat at that table. Carla was silent. We need to take this public, Thomas continued. Expose Lansing before he makes this real. But it won't be easy. Carla's voice, when it came, was steel wrapped in velvet. Then we don't go easy. Anna walked into the room at that exact moment, holding her napkin. I'm ready now, she said. Carla knelt beside her. Want to read it? Anna nodded and unfolded it slowly. Dear bad people, she began, voice steady. You can't scare us. We still have our chairs. You can't take them. They belong to everybody, even you. But only if you stop being mean. She looked up. Is that okay? Carla hugged her tight. It's perfect. The next day, Thomas called in every favor he had. He arranged an interview not with a morning show, not with a gossip site, but with the New York Times. Carla agreed to it on one condition. Anna would not be bait. The story had to be about the people, the community, the movement, not just a girl with a big imagination. The journalist who showed up was young, thoughtful, and prepared. She asked Anna one question only. Why do you think people like your idea? Anna thought for a long time, then said, because sometimes they don't feel real until someone sets a plate for them. And that became the headline. By the end of the week, Lansing's office issued a statement denying all development plans. But it was too late. Public pressure surged. Community leaders held rallies. The Invisible Guests movement gained national traction. And at the next table gathering, more chairs were filled than ever before. But Carla noticed something as the sun dipped low. A single empty chair. With no plate. Not one of Anna's usual guests. It was set at the edge of the gathering, facing the sidewalk. Who's that for? She asked. Anna looked up and smiled. That one's for the man in the suit, she said. Just in case he ever wants to sit down. Carla blinked. Lansing? Anna shrugged. Everybody gets a chance. Even him. Carla looked at her daughter, stunned. Not by the words, but by the truth in them. The storm had not passed. But for the first time, they weren't waiting for it to end. They were setting the table right through it. By mid-November, the leaves on the trees had turned a deep copper and began to fall like quiet confessions, scattering across sidewalks and stoops. The neighborhood, once so weary and invisible, was now buzzing with motion. More people walked with their heads up. Kids played louder. Strangers greeted one another like old friends, asking, "Will there be another table this weekend?" as though it had always been tradition. Atop the old apartment building on 8th Street, the rooftop once cluttered with rusted satellite dishes and forgotten lawn chairs had been transformed. Thomas had funded a modest renovation. Clean tiles, string lights, and a few wooden benches. But it was Anna who had made it magical. One afternoon, while Carla was at a checkup and Thomas was attending a board meeting, Anna had climbed the stairs alone with a folding chair, a single paper plate, and a napkin. She placed them near the corner of the rooftop, where the city could be seen stretching far and wide. Then she sat quietly beside it, humming to herself and writing slowly, carefully. It was there that Thomas found her when he came by later that evening. He stepped out onto the rooftop, surprised by how cozy it felt under the soft light of dusk. Anna didn't turn when she heard him. She simply patted the chair beside her. "I made a spot," she said. "For who?" She pointed to the extra chair. "Someone who's scared to come upstairs." Thomas sat down, folding his long legs beside hers. "That could be a lot of people." "Yeah," she whispered. "That's why I come every night. Just in case." Thomas looked at the napkin she held. He smiled. "You writing another note?" She nodded. "But I'm not done. This one's for someone who doesn't believe in tables yet." He leaned back, eyes closed for a moment. "That might be the hardest kind of someone." That's okay," she said. "They can still be invited." He turned to her. "You know, the rooftop's becoming something special. It's high enough to hear the stars." Thomas blinked. "You mean see the stars?" Anna shook her head. "No, hear them." And then they both sat in silence for a while, letting the soft wind carry thoughts they didn't need to say out loud. Meanwhile, Carla sat across from her doctor, watching the woman's face shift ever so slightly as she reviewed the latest test results. Dr. Chen was kind but direct. "Carla, your flare-ups are getting more frequent. The last round of meds isn't holding. We'll need to try a stronger treatment. That means longer sessions, more rest, less stress." Carla nodded, numb. "And if I don't?" Dr. Chen looked up, folding her hands. "Then you'll wear out faster. You're already pushing harder than your body's ready for. I have a daughter. I can't. Stop showing up." "I'm not saying stop," Dr. Chen replied gently. "I'm saying share the weight." Carla left the office feeling heavier than she had in weeks. The sun was already dipping by the time she got home. She paused at the building entrance, hand resting against the doorframe. Breath slow. She needed help, and she hated needing it. That night, Thomas stayed for dinner. Carla cooked red beans and rice, simple, filling, and familiar. They ate around the kitchen table, Anna setting out pretend candles made from paper towel rolls wrapped in glitter tape. After they finished eating, Carla reached for her tea but paused halfway. "I need to say something," she began. Thomas looked up. Anna tilted her head. "I'm tired," Carla said. "More than I let on. The doctor says if I don't slow down, I'm going to break." Anna's eyes went wide. "You're not allowed to break." Carla smiled softly. "I know, baby. But I might need help holding the pieces together." Thomas placed his cup down slowly. "Anything. Just say it. I want to keep doing this, the tables, the stories, the seats. But I can't do it all. Not every week. Not with my body fighting me." Thomas nodded. "We'll build a team. Rotate the leadership. Find other voices to carry the mission." Carla hesitated. "And if I step back too far? Then we step forward for you," he said. Anna reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "You made the first table. That means we can all bring chairs now." Carla exhaled. tears pricking her eyes. I just didn't want it to stop. It won't, Thomas said. Not if we make it bigger than any one of us. That night, they wrote the blueprint, the Open Table Council. Each neighborhood would nominate leaders. There would be 3 roles per community: the cook, the listener, and the keeper of the empty chair. Each role symbolized something vital: sustenance, story, and space. It wasn't official. There was no paperwork yet. But it felt real. Felt alive. A week later, they held the first rooftop dinner. It was modest. Just 20 people, neighbors, strangers, friends from nearby blocks. They shared food, laughter, and a few stories under the open sky. At the edge of the rooftop, Anna's chair remained. Still empty. Still waiting. As the night drew to a close, someone approached it. An older man, perhaps in his 60s, with kind eyes and hands that looked like they'd built houses or broken them. He hesitated. Anna stood beside him. "Want to sit?" He looked down at her. "Is it really okay?" "It's why we brought it." He sat down slowly, reverently. Then he began to cry. No one asked why. They just passed him a plate. Later, as the stars blinked awake, Carla stood with Thomas near the stairwell. The city was below them, still full of noise and need. But up here, there was peace. "You think it's really working?" she asked. Thomas looked around. "I think it already has." They watched Anna laughing with 2 kids from another building, pointing at the moon, pretending it was a clock telling stories instead of time. And beneath the moonlight, the chair remained never just empty. Always ready, always listening. Winter arrived early that year. The city shivered beneath a layer of frost, and the wind howled between buildings like it was carrying old stories, long forgotten. But inside the apartment building on 8th Street, warmth bloomed in the form of casseroles shared between neighbors, coats passed down instead of thrown away, and a steady stream of folded chairs appearing in lobbies, hallways, even elevators, always with a paper plate beside them. The open table movement wasn't just surviving. It was multiplying. Anna, bundled in 2 scarves and her favorite polka dot mittens, had begun leaving her napkin notes in unexpected places. The bus stop bench, the laundromat wall, even the corner mailbox. Her messages were simple, but they carried weight. "You are not forgotten. There's a seat waiting just for you. Lonely doesn't mean alone." Thomas collected a few of these notes and kept them in his wallet, next to his old corporate ID. The more he read them, the more he realized how many rooms he had been in where no one ever asked who was missing. That week, something unexpected arrived in Carla's mailbox, a formal envelope with the city seal embossed in gold. She opened it slowly, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside was an official letter from the mayor's office. They were renaming the community center, the Anna Davis Open Table Center. Carla stared at the words, heart caught between pride and disbelief. A photo of the new signage was included. It was already up. Below Anna's name was a tagline in bronze, "Where every chair means something." Tears slipped down her cheeks before she realized they had started. She called Thomas immediately. "They didn't ask," she said. "Do you want them to take it down?" he asked carefully. She hesitated. "No, but it's big. She deserved big. She's a child, Thomas. She's also a symbol. And maybe symbols are what we need right now." Carla looked over at Anna, who was quietly drawing suns in the corner of a notebook, completely unaware that her name now adorned the front of a city building. Carla lowered her voice. "Just promise me this won't take her away." "I won't let it," Thomas said. "I swear." The grand reopening of the center took place on the coldest Saturday of the season. Still, nearly 300 people came. Some brought casseroles wrapped in towels. Others brought folding chairs with homemade seat covers. Everyone brought a story. The ceremony was simple: a ribbon, a microphone. A crowd that didn't need convincing. Carla stood before them, her breath visible in the cold, her voice clear and grounded. "When my daughter set out an empty plate on the grass that first day, she wasn't asking for charity. She wasn't asking for attention. She was inviting someone in, someone unseen. And now, we have an entire city asking themselves, who have we forgotten?" That's what this center will be. A place where remembering becomes action. Applause rose like heat from a fire. Then, the mayor handed Anna a small plaque. She whispered, "Is it chocolate?" and made the entire audience laugh. Carla knelt and whispered, "Say thank you, baby." Anna took the microphone with both hands. "Thank you," she said, her voice echoing softly. "But I didn't build this alone. My mommy helped. Mr. Thomas helped. Miss Roberta helped. Even the invisible people helped. We just had to listen." There was a stillness in the crowd that could only be called reverence. That night, Thomas stayed late at the center, helping clean up spilled punch and carefully folding extra chairs. Carla joined him in the multipurpose room, where the last of the decorations fluttered from the ceiling vents. "You ever think about what's next?" she asked. "All the time," he replied, "because this movement, it's not just yours to grow anymore. It belongs to everyone now. It needs structure. People need support. They want to start chapters in other cities. I've gotten calls from Baltimore, Oakland, New Orleans. I've been thinking about something," Thomas said, glancing at her. "What's that?" "A foundation. Not in my name. Not even in Anna's. Just the Chair Project. Something to handle logistics, resources, and protect the message from being co-opted." Carla smiled. "That's actually a damn good idea." He looked at her. "Would you run it?" Her smile faded into surprise. "Me? You're the soul of this thing, Carla. You know how to lead without preaching, organize without steamrolling. People trust you. And more importantly, you know when someone's hungry, even when they say they're not." She took a breath, unsure. "But I'm sick, Thomas. Some days I can't even hold a cup. Then you lead from the days you can, and we build a team for the days you can't." "Zer." Carla sat down slowly, her hands folded. "Let me think about it." He nodded. "Take all the time you need." A long silence fell between them, comfortable this time. Then Carla asked, "Why are you really doing all this? You could be anywhere. You have more money than God. Why this? Why us?" Thomas looked at the chair beside him, the one Anna always insisted be left empty. "Because once, when I was 10, I came home from school and found an eviction notice on the door. My mom pretended it was a mistake, said she'd sorted out. But we packed that night. And when we left, she said, 'We're not poor. We're just in between tables.'" I didn't understand what she meant until Anna. Carla blinked back emotion. "What happened to your mom?" "She worked herself to death before anyone ever saved her a seat." Silence again. Then Carla reached over and placed a hand on his. "Well, she'd be proud of the table you're building now." A few days later, Carla said yes. The Chair Project was officially formed. Quietly, deliberately. No press release, no gala. Just a new email address, a new phone line, and a handful of committed people with lived experience. Anna didn't quite understand the scope of it, but she celebrated by placing a gold sticker on the first official open table handbook. It read, "Property of everybody." That evening, back on the rooftop, Anna added a second chair beside the usual empty one. When Carla asked why, Anna simply replied, "In case the first guest brings a friend." And so the rooftop became a sanctuary. 2 chairs, 2 plates, one city still learning how to listen, and a little girl who had reminded them that being seen isn't a privilege, it's a birthright. Snow had started to fall, soft, hesitant flakes that melted as soon as they touched the pavement but whispered a promise. Winter was here to stay. The city slowed under the hush of cold. Streetlights flickered to life earlier. People rushed from stoop to subway. Collars up, eyes down. But on the rooftop of 8th Street, the 2 chairs remained. Anna still visited nearly every afternoon, bundled in mismatched layers like a walking quilt. Her cheeks red from the cold, her breath visible in soft puffs. She'd sit with her notebook and wait, not always for someone specific, just for someone. One evening, as twilight wrapped the skyline in blue, Anna looked up to find a man standing at the rooftop entrance. He wasn't from the building. His coat was threadbare, sleeves too short, no gloves, no hat. He looked out of place, and yet, as he stepped forward, he didn't seem surprised by the chairs. Anna stood. "Hi," she said. The man nodded. eyes tired. Is this the place? Anna tilted her head. The place for what? He glanced at the empty chairs. For people who don't belong anywhere. She smiled softly. Then yes, this is the place. He moved toward the chairs slowly, like every step cost him something. When he sat, he didn't say thank you. He just closed his eyes and rested his hands on the paper plate in front of him. Anna didn't ask his name. She didn't offer him a story or a crayon. She just sat beside him and hummed quietly. Carla, watching from the fire escape window 2 floors down, felt her heart ache. She slipped on her boots and coat and made her way upstairs. When she reached the rooftop, she recognized the look in the man's eyes, exhaustion edged with shame. She stepped forward gently. Would you like something warm? The man looked at her. Only if it's not charity. It's not, she said. It's community. He paused, then nodded. They went downstairs, and Carla poured him soup from the stove, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. He didn't say much. Just sipped and listened. His name was Elijah. Once a carpenter, then a caregiver for his wife through 5 years of illness. When she passed, the world closed around him like a box with no key. I used to build homes, he said quietly, but I never built a place for myself. Anna slid him a napkin. You can write a new one, she said. A home, on paper. It counts. He chuckled, eyes soft. Maybe I will. That night, after Elijah left with a bag of food and a promise to return, Carla sat beside Anna on her bed. Baby, she said, brushing hair from her daughter's forehead. Why do you always keep one chair empty? Anna yawned. Because some people don't know they're invited yet. Carla kissed her temple. You're a wise little old lady wrapped in a tiny body. I get it from you, Anna murmured, already halfway to sleep. Across town, Thomas was facing a different kind of storm. The chair project had grown faster than anyone expected. Chapters in 5 cities, hundreds of volunteers, donors from every walk of life. But with growth came pressure, and with pressure came people who wanted to shape the narrative. His board was split. Half wanted a national rollout, full marketing, PR campaigns, strategic branding. The other half, those who had come from the original rooftop meetings, wanted to preserve the intimacy, the simplicity. No logos. No spectacle. Just stories and chairs. Thomas sat at the head of the conference room table, listening as voices rose. We can't afford to stay small, one executive said. We have momentum. We could become the next Red Cross, the next United Way. But that's not the point, Peter countered. This started with an empty plate on the grass. That's what people believe in. Thomas held up a hand. Silence fell. He stood and walked to the whiteboard, uncapping a marker. He drew a simple line. At one end, he wrote, hunger. At the other, belonging. Then he turned to them. There are plenty of nonprofits feeding mouths. But this feeds something deeper. A kind of spiritual hunger. The kind you feel when you walk into a room and realize no one saved you a seat. He capped the marker. If we forget that, we become just another well-funded machine. I'm not interested in machines. I'm interested in people. There were no more arguments after that. Back in the neighborhood, Elijah returned the next week. Then the next. He didn't always speak. But he brought things: an old blanket he had patched, a book he used to read to his wife, a photo he found in a church hallway of strangers eating together in 1942. These belong at the table too, he said. Memory matters. Anna took to calling him Mr. Homebuilder. He never corrected her. One day, he arrived early and asked to help set the table. Carla handed him plates and plastic cups, watching as his hands moved with the precision of a man who remembered how to measure with heart. You're good at this, she said. He smiled. It's been a long time since anyone said that. Anna appeared beside him, dragging a folding chair. This one's yours now, she declared. You don't have to wait anymore. Elijah blinked rapidly. He didn't speak. He just sat and stayed. At the next open table council meeting, Carla nominated him as the keeper of the empty chair for their chapter. The vote was unanimous. You know what it means? She asked him afterward. He nodded. I do. It means I remember what it feels like not to be seen. And I make sure no one else feels that way. She smiled. You're going to be good at this. I already was, he said softly. I just forgot. That night, on the rooftop, Anna wrote another napkin letter. She gave it to Elijah and said, "This one's for you to keep." He unfolded it carefully. "Dear Mr. Homebuilder, you found your chair. Now help others find theirs. And if they're scared, hold the chair steady until they're ready to sit." His hands trembled. He folded the napkin, placed it in his pocket, and whispered, "Thank you." Anna grinned. That's what the table's for. And as the snow fell thicker, covering rooftops and alleys and forgotten corners of the city, one table remained uncovered, kept warm by hands, stories, and the quiet promise of a seat always waiting just in case someone finally decided to come home. The first public symposium for the chair project was held in the old city library, an elegant sandstone building that had stood through 2 wars, 3 recessions, and countless broken promises. The community auditorium inside hadn't been used in years, its wood floors creaking with memory, its velvet chairs faded from sunlight and silence. But on this Saturday, the room was full. More than 200 people showed up, organizers from different cities, volunteers, council leaders, and people who had once been guests and were now hosts. Carla stood backstage in a soft navy dress, clutching her notes. She was nervous. Not because of the speech, but because of what this moment meant. Her face wasn't on the posters. She hadn't agreed to be the brand. But her voice, that was something different. That still belonged to her. Thomas stepped beside her, adjusting his cufflinks. "You're up after Peter. Want me to introduce you?" "No," she said, taking a breath. "Let the silence do that." Peter's voice echoed out front. He was thanking donors, welcoming cities who had traveled miles to be there: Fresno, Birmingham, Toledo. A soft applause rolled in waves. Then came a pause. Carla knew that was her cue. She stepped out slowly. Not fast, not eager. Like she belonged. The microphone stood alone in the center of the wooden stage, bathed in warm yellow light. She walked up, adjusted it slightly, then said, "There's a picture I keep in my kitchen. It's not framed, just stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a spoon. In that photo is my daughter, 6 years old, sitting at a picnic table with nothing but empty plates. And she is smiling like the world is already full." The room went quiet, caught in the hush between breath and recognition. That day, we didn't have food, but we had each other. And my daughter believed hard enough for both of us that someone would sit with her. That someone she couldn't see would feel welcome. That an empty chair wasn't a sign of absence, but a space waiting to be filled. She looked across the audience, saw heads nodding, hands resting over hearts. That's where the chair project started. Not with a press release, not with money, with hope. Hope served on a paper plate. Applause broke, rising like waves slapping a dock. Carla let it wash over her, but didn't soak in it. She had more to say. "And I need you all to remember something. This movement isn't a brand. It's not a slogan. It's a question. A question we ask with every chair we set. Who's still missing?" Silence again, the good kind, the kind that listens. She stepped back from the microphone and gave the room a small nod before walking off stage. Thomas met her with quiet pride in his eyes. "You shook them," he said. "I didn't need to shake them," she replied. "I needed to wake them." Back in the crowd, Anna sat in the front row next to Elijah. Her legs dangled off the chair, not quite long enough to touch the ground. She clapped the hardest of anyone, her mittens slapping together in fuzzy joy. But in the very back row, nearly in the shadows, sat a man who didn't clap. He wore a long coat, expensive but old. His shoes were polished, his tie perfect. His face was hard to read, stern, unreadable, except for the way his hands gripped the program in his lap like it might float away if he let go. Thomas noticed him just as the crowd began to thin. He whispered to Peter, who followed his gaze and went pale. "Is that?" "Yeah," Thomas said. "That's Lansing." They didn't approach him, not yet. Later, after the reception, Carla walked through the side hallway toward the rear exit, needing a breath of cold air. That's when she saw him alone, standing by the old card catalog drawers, staring at nothing. She stopped. He turned. They looked at each other, not like enemies, not quite like strangers. just two people who had stood on opposite sides of something and finally stepped into the middle. "You came," Carla said quietly. Lansing adjusted his cuff. "I thought I'd see the machine in action." "This isn't a machine," she replied. "It's a mirror. You see what you bring to it." He smirked. "Steel sharp. I haven't forgotten what you did. The threats, the pressure, trying to shut us down. And yet, here you are, with more cities, more chairs, and your name on buildings." Carla's eyes didn't flinch. "It's not about me." Lansing nodded slowly. Then surprised her. "I didn't come to fight." "Then why?" He looked around. The faded wall paint. The community-made posters. The napkins people had pinned on a corkboard near the exit. Dozens of them. All different handwriting. All saying the same thing. "You matter." He turned back to her, because something inside me wanted to know if this was real, if people still cared about strangers. Carla stepped closer, not with warmth, but with steadiness. "We don't care because it's easy. We care because we remember what it's like not to be seen." He said nothing. Then, almost without thinking, Carla reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out a folded napkin, the same kind Anna used. She handed it to him. He didn't open it right away. "You don't have to sit at our table," she said. "But you don't get to pretend it doesn't exist anymore." Then she walked away. Lansing unfolded the napkin. Inside, in shaky but certain handwriting, were 7 words. "Your seat is still here, if ready." The next day, Anna placed a new chair on the rooftop. No one asked why. She didn't say, but she faced it toward the north side of the city, and she whispered something to the wind that only the sky could hear. Something about second chances, about people who took too long to come home, and about how it's never too late to set one more place. The days grew shorter. December brought with it a cold that seeped into the bones and reminded everyone that time, like warmth, was not guaranteed. The rooftop chairs were now covered with thick blankets, and the paper plates were replaced by small wooden trays that Carla found at a thrift store and polished until they gleamed like polished truth. The open table gatherings hadn't stopped. They had simply adapted. Some moved indoors. Others happened in stairwells, church basements, even old garages converted into makeshift kitchens. Wherever someone was willing to open a door and set a chair, the table grew. Anna's napkin notes were now collected by local teachers. They had become a part of the reading curriculum at 2 elementary schools. Her words, simple, clear, brave, were being used to teach compassion, but she remained just Anna. Just a girl who believed invisible guests mattered as much as the ones who spoke. And then, one gray morning, the doorbell rang. Carla was folding laundry, and Anna was drawing smiley faces on the fogged window. Thomas had left town for a few days to oversee the launch of a new chapter in Kansas City. Elijah had taken a group of teenagers on a volunteer mission to repair an abandoned community hall. So the house was quiet when the knock came again, this time, louder. Carla opened the door slowly. Standing there, wrapped in a thick wool coat and holding a single red rose, was Lansing. She stared at him, unsure whether to speak or shut the door. Her silence said everything. "I'm not here to take anything," he said, voice lower than usual. "I'm here to return something." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the napkin, the same one she had given him at the library. It looked like it had been unfolded and refolded 100 times. "I read this every day," he said. "And every day, I asked myself what I'd do if I ever knocked on this door." "And?" Carla asked, arms folded, her voice steady. "And today I realized I'm not ready to sit at the table yet. But maybe I can help build one." Carla said nothing for a long moment. Then Anna peeked around her mother's side. Her eyes lit up. "Oh, you're the man from the back row." Lansing blinked, taken aback. "You remember me?" "I remember people who look like they don't want to be remembered," she said with a small grin. "Come inside." He hesitated. Carla didn't move aside. "Not yet." "What do you want, Lansing?" she asked, voice soft but firm. "I want to sponsor something," he said. "Not a logo, not a brand, a space. A room in this city where people can sit without being judged. No press, no ribbon cutting, just quiet healing." "Why?" He looked at Anna, then back at Carla. "Because I made a life out of ignoring people like her, and you, and Elijah. I was wrong. Carla stepped aside. Only slightly. "Leave your shoes at the door," she said. Lansing stepped in, the weight of his past following him like a long shadow. 2 weeks later, the room was ready. It was in an old railway station, long since abandoned, restored just enough to hold heat and light but not so much that it lost its history. Anna called it the Room of Echoes. It had no signage, no stage, just 20 mismatched chairs in a circle, a small fireplace, and a single table in the center with a journal placed open. Carla's handwriting filled the first page. "If you have something to say, this table listens." Every evening, people came. Some sat and wept without speaking. Others wrote letters and tucked them under the tablecloth like offerings. And some, just a few, read their stories aloud. One man shared how he hadn't spoken to his brother in 17 years after a fight about their father's will. Another woman whispered about a daughter she gave up for adoption and how she looked for her in every coffee shop. An old veteran recited a poem he'd written in the trenches of a war he never wanted to fight. No one was turned away. No one interrupted. Thomas returned from Kansas City and visited the room the next day. He stood quietly in the doorway, watching people sit, pause, breathe. He felt something ancient there, something sacred. He didn't speak. He simply pulled out a chair and joined the circle. Back at home, Anna started painting the chairs on the rooftop. Each one had a different color now. Sky blue, sunflower yellow, moss green. On the back of each chair, she wrote a single word: wet, remember, hope, listen, my. When Carla asked her why, Anna replied, "Because sometimes people forget what chairs are for." Elijah brought her a chair from his old workshop. It was creaky, uneven, with carvings in the legs that told a story of many repairs. "I sat in this when I held her hand," he said quietly, referring to his late wife. "Thought maybe someone else could sit in it when they're ready to hold on." Anna painted it lavender and wrote, "Still here," on the seat. That week, a woman named Sherry came to one of the table gatherings. She sat in Elijah's chair and cried for 20 minutes without saying a word. No one asked her to explain. When she finally looked up, she said, "I haven't spoken out loud since my son passed 3 years ago. This was the first place that didn't ask me to move on." Carla offered her a second cup of tea. Anna offered her a napkin, and the circle got bigger again. One night, as snow fell softly and the city lay hushed, Anna sat between Carla and Thomas on the rooftop. The chairs were all there. The stars were all out. "Do you think the world is healing?" she asked. Thomas didn't answer right away. He looked at Carla, then at the flickering lights of the city beyond. "I think we're giving it permission to," Carla added. "And maybe showing it how." Anna rested her head against her mother's arm. "Then we better keep setting chairs." They sat in silence after that. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because some truths don't need repeating. They just need room to breathe. Like stories, like forgiveness, like a chair waiting, patiently, for someone to sit down. It was a Wednesday evening in late January when the storm hit. Not the kind of storm that roared in like a lion, but the quiet, heavy kind that blanketed everything in silence. Snow fell thick and fast, blurring windows and slowing time. Power lines froze. One by one, buildings lost light. By 7 p.m., the entire west side of the city was dark. No traffic lights. No heaters. No hum of television sets behind apartment walls. The rooftop, usually lit by string lights and laughter, became a quiet white sheet under the moon. Anna was the first to notice. "The chairs look like ghosts," she whispered, peeking through the frost-covered window. Carla pulled on her boots, grabbed a flashlight, and lit a few candles. The apartment was already cooling down, and she knew some of the older neighbors would need help. Elijah had gone to visit his cousin outside the city, and Thomas was scheduled to return the next morning. So tonight, it was just her and Anna. "We need to check on folks," Carla said, zipping up her coat. "You coming with me, little general?" Anna nodded, already putting on her oversized mittens. "Let's bring the candle, Mommy. The one with the cinnamon smell." Together, they moved through the building, knocking gently on doors. They found Mrs. Klein on the 3rd floor, wrapped in 3 sweaters. struggling to find her inhaler. Carla stayed with her while Anna went down to check on Mr. Jimenez, the retired bus driver who often forgot to charge his phone. He had taken a fall earlier in the week and still walked with a cane. "Everything okay?" Anna called into the hallway. "Cold as the moon," he grumbled, "but I'll live." By 9 p.m., the building had become a makeshift lighthouse. Carla, using the emergency camping stove, heated broth in tin mugs and passed them around. Anna handed out hand warmers and napkin notes she had kept in a shoebox just for quiet days. Each note was simple. "You are not alone. We remember you. Stay, just stay." They gathered in the lobby, all 10 floors worth of tenants. Blankets piled over legs, hats shared, stories whispered. One woman brought out a harmonica, another read poetry from memory. Then, in the dim flicker of a candle, someone suggested they go to the rooftop. "No lights up there anyway," said Mr. Jimenez. "Might as well freeze together instead of alone." The group chuckled. Then slowly, carefully, they climbed. The rooftop looked different in the dark. The painted chairs were covered in snow. The table, long since cleared for winter, had a dusting of white across its surface like icing sugar. Anna ran ahead, her boots crunching softly, and brushed snow off the lavender chair Elijah had given her. "I want to sit in this one," she said, looking up at the stars. "It still remembers things." The neighbors spread out across the rooftop, each choosing a chair or standing nearby, huddled in scarves and coats. No one spoke for a long moment, and then, as if on cue, Carla began to sing. It wasn't loud, it wasn't perfect, but it was full, a low, steady hum of an old hymn her mother used to sing. "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." One by one, others joined. Soon the rooftop echoed with voices, some raspy, some timid, some strong, singing not to impress, but to remind each other they were still here, still warm, still connected. When the final note faded, the silence that followed was not empty, it was sacred. Then, from the rooftop stairwell, a flashlight beam appeared, and Thomas stepped out, his face red from the cold, scarf flapping in the wind. He looked at the scene in front of him and blinked. "Well," he said, his voice warm with awe. "Leave town for 2 days, and you turn into a rooftop choir." Laughter broke through the cold. Thomas made his way over to Carla and handed her a thermos. Hot cocoa. From the bus station cafe. They were giving it out to travelers stuck overnight. She took a grateful sip. "You made it just in time. Wouldn't miss it," he replied. "You know, it's funny. This all started with one empty chair." Carla looked around. Now, there were 20 people on the roof, more in the building, dozens across the city, hundreds across the country. She nodded. "And now, none of them are empty." Thomas looked up at the sky. "We should do this again." "The blackout?" He laughed. "No, the rooftop, the togetherness." Carla smiled. "Every week, same time." Anna, who had been listening, raised her mittened hand. "And I'll make the invitations." Everyone cheered softly. The next morning, power returned to the west side. Lights flickered back on. Heaters hummed to life. Phones buzzed with missed messages and weather alerts. But something had changed. Not just in the building, but in the way people looked at each other. In the way someone held a door a little longer. Or how a stranger offered half their muffin at the coffee shop. Or how silence didn't always need to be filled with noise-only presence. Later that week, the Chair Project received an anonymous donation with a note attached. "I watched from a rooftop across the street. I saw how your chairs held more than people. They held stories. They held safety. Thank you for reminding me what light looks like in the dark." The donation was enough to fund heating kits for every rooftop chapter in the state. Carla placed a copy of the note in the room of echoes, and beside it, a single napkin. "One light can wake a city." Anna drew a picture beside the napkin. It was of a chair with stars above it, and a little girl sitting next to someone who wasn't quite there yet. But the chair was never empty. It was waiting. As always, patient, warm, ready. February arrived with a slow thaw, but winter still clung to the corners of the city like an old sorrow that didn't know when to leave. The rooftop meetings continued, bundled in layers and laughter. Thermoses filled with tea, and chairs lined like quiet sentinels under the watchful sky. Carla had begun to notice a shift not just in the number of attendees, but in their eyes. People arrived not only with hunger or loneliness, but also with stories. And some of them came bearing letters. It started with a single envelope, slipped under the door of the Room of Echoes. No return address, no name, just a plain white envelope with a faint smudge on one corner, as if someone had hesitated, thought better of it, and then finally let go. Carla found it early one morning, while sweeping the floor before the first gathering. She picked it up carefully, sat in Elijah's donated chair, and opened it with the tenderness usually reserved for something sacred. The letter was handwritten, neat cursive, a bit shaky. To whoever keeps this place open, it began. I've walked past this building 5 times. Each time, I stopped. Each time, I kept going. But yesterday, I saw a woman sitting inside, reading a letter with tears in her eyes, and something cracked open in me. Carla paused, already feeling the familiar ache behind her ribs. I haven't spoken to my father in 22 years. We argued over my choice to marry someone he didn't approve of. Then he got sick, and I stayed away out of pride, or maybe fear, or maybe I just forgot how to go back. But last night, I dreamed he was sitting in one of your chairs, and he wasn't mad. He just patted the chair next to him. And I woke up crying. Carla blinked away the sting in her eyes. I don't know if I'll ever walk through your door, but I needed to tell someone that your chairs matter. That silence breaks when it has a place to land. Thank you for giving silence a place to sit. There was no signature, just one final line. If there's still a chair for me, maybe I'll be ready soon. Carla folded the letter gently and placed it beside Anna's napkins in the center of the table. When the others arrived, she didn't read it aloud. She simply pointed to it and said, "There's someone out there who almost came home." The circle grew quieter that evening. Not solemn, just softer. More aware. That night, Anna made a new napkin. It read, "It's okay to take your time. Chairs don't leave." A few days later, Thomas called Carla with news. "We've had a request," he said, his voice tinged with both excitement and hesitation. "A request?" "Yes. From the state prison system. They want to pilot a version of the chair project inside one of their rehabilitation units." Carla sat up straighter. "You mean behind bars?" "Yes. Minimum security, non-violent offenders. The warden read about us. Said he's never seen inmates open up the way they did after someone brought in a stack of our napkin notes last month." "No." Carla was silent for a beat. "Do we say yes?" Thomas asked. "We say yes," Carla replied, "but we do it our way. No press, no spectacle, just chairs and people." 1 week later, Carla, Thomas, and Elijah entered Redwood Correctional Facility with nothing more than a folding table, 12 plastic chairs, and a shoebox full of Anna's napkin notes. They were led to a classroom painted beige and quiet, in the way only institutional spaces can be too clean, too still, too tired. 8 men entered. Some young, some gray at the temples. None made eye contact at first, but then Elijah stepped forward, placed the lavender chair in the center of the room, and said, "This one knows how to listen." A few men smiled. One nodded. They began simply. Thomas introduced the project. Carla shared Anna's story. And then, they invited the men to speak. Not about their crimes. Not about remorse. Just about chairs. One man said his favorite chair was the one on his grandmother's porch, where she'd give him butterscotch candy and tell him stories in Spanish. Another said he hadn't had a chair of his own since he was 12. One simply pointed to a corner and whispered, "That's where I sit in my dreams. Every time." Carla passed around the napkins. One man refused to take one, but by the end of the hour, he asked if he could write something. He wrote, "I was wrong, but I'm still here." Carla placed it in her coat pocket. That night, back at home, she showed it to Anna. Anna traced the words with her finger and said, "Can we send him a new chair?" "We can't send a real one," Carla replied, "but we can send a picture." Anna nodded and got to work. By the morning, she had drawn a chair sitting in front of a barred window, with sunlight pouring over it. On the back of the chair was a ribbon, and underneath it, she wrote, "This chair is waiting for you outside." The following week, the anonymous letter writer returned. Carla found another envelope, same corner smudge, same careful cursive. I walked past again. This time I stopped at the door. I didn't open it, but I sat on the steps. I think that counts. It did count, and Carla began keeping a chair near the door every evening, just in case the writer decided to come inside. She called it the almost chair. Anna painted it sky blue, and on the back, she wrote, "Almost is halfway to brave." The days moved forward, quietly, purposefully. One night, during a rooftop gathering, Lansing showed up again, this time with a friend, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a laugh that cracked like thunder. "This is Marlene," he said, guiding her to a seat. "She was the first person who ever gave me a second chance." Marlene looked around the rooftop and smiled. "Feels like the kind of place where people remember how to breathe." Elijah brought her cocoa. Anna gave her a napkin, and just like that, the circle grew again. The next morning, Carla found a single white envelope on the lavender chair. It was unmarked. Inside, one line, "Tonight I'll sit." She looked up at the sky and whispered, "We'll be ready." And they were. That evening, the air had a kind of expectancy to it, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. The rooftop was already arranged, chairs in their familiar circle, lanterns flickering with amber light, and the lavender chair, the almost chair, facing the stairwell, just a few feet from the entrance. Carla had placed a soft cushion on it. Anna had tucked a folded napkin beneath the seat. No one knew for sure who would come, but everyone knew someone would. The group gathered slowly, as they always did, some bringing thermoses, others just themselves. Thomas arrived with a plate of warm cinnamon rolls from the corner bakery. Elijah came late, his hands dusty from helping a neighbor fix their back porch steps. Anna wore her favorite yellow scarf, one too big for her neck, but perfect for twirling between sentences. They waited without waiting. Talk flowed easily, old stories, small updates, the kind of gentle noise that builds when people feel safe. Then, at exactly 7:43 p.m., the stairwell door creaked open, and he appeared, a man in his 50s, maybe early 60s. Medium build, eyes like deep water, cautious but kind. He wore a charcoal coat that had seen too many winters and carried nothing in his hands. He didn't say a word as he stepped onto the rooftop. Just looked around, scanning faces, as if searching for someone he wasn't sure would recognize him anymore. Carla rose to her feet. Anna whispered, "Is that him?" Carla nodded slowly. "I think at Island." The man's eyes landed on the lavender chair, and he smiled. It was faint, the kind of smile a person learns after years of carrying too much silence. He walked over, placed a trembling hand on the backrest, and then, slowly, carefully sat down. No one clapped, no one asked questions. They just made space. Carla stepped forward, holding out a mug of tea. "I'm Carla." He took the cup with both hands. "I'm Ben." There was something old and broken in his voice, like the worn pages of a letter never mailed. "Welcome, Ben," she said. He looked around the circle and cleared his throat. "I wrote a letter," he said. "A while ago. I didn't sign it. I wasn't ready." Anna tilted her head. "You're the almost." Ben looked at her, eyes wide. "Excuse me? You're the one who almost came in," she said, grinning. "But now you're here. That makes you not almost." A ripple of warm laughter passed through the group. Ben chuckled, a sound he hadn't made in years. "I guess I'm not." He looked down at the napkin beneath the seat, read the words slowly. "Almost is halfway to brave. I think I've been halfway for a long time," he said. "Tonight, I took the other half." He didn't speak again for a while. Just sat, sipped his tea, listened to the rooftop murmur, but something in the air had shifted, not because Ben had arrived, but because he'd been welcomed. After the gathering, most people lingered, not ready to leave. A few helped fold the blankets. Others stayed behind just to sit a little longer. Ben didn't move from the lavender chair. Carla came to sit beside him in the one marked Hope. "I thought I'd feel more nervous," he said quietly. Why don't you? Because no one asked me to explain myself. Carla smiled. You don't owe us your history, only your honesty. He took a long breath. Then I'll give you both. And then, with the stars blinking above them, Ben told her the story. He had once been a counselor at a youth home in another city, someone young boys trusted with their fears and rage. For 12 years, he had sat in chairs like these, listening to stories that no one else had time to hear. But when an accusation came, a false one, later recanted, his reputation was gone in days. He wasn't fired, he wasn't arrested, but the looks changed. The air around him grew cold. And eventually, he left. Not just the job, everything. I stopped believing in safe chairs, he said. Stopped believing I deserved to sit anywhere. Carla didn't interrupt. She didn't offer comfort. She offered presence. And when he finished, she reached over, touched the edge of the lavender chair, and said, "Then let this be the first one that invites you back." He didn't cry, but his shoulders lowered, just a bit. A kind of release that spoke louder than tears. 3 days later, Ben returned. He brought a chair. It was scratched, uneven, one leg shorter than the others, but he had carved something into the backrest himself. Tell your story, we'll hold the silence. Anna helped him paint it sea green, and they placed it beside Elijah's lavender chair. Ben didn't sit in it. He said it wasn't his. It's for the next almost, he said. And with that, a new ritual began. Every week, a new chair joined the rooftop. Not from stores, from people. Each one carried a story, a regret, a réconciliation, a leçon. Some came with names, some came anonymously, but all were offered freely. The rooftop began to look like a patchwork of humanity, every shade, every shape, every seat telling a story. By month's end, the chair project received a letter from the governor's office. They had been watching quietly, respectfully, and were requesting a private meeting. Not for publicity, not for policy, but for counsel. Carla read the letter twice. Thomas, ever the realist, asked, "You trust them?" "No," she replied. "But trust doesn't begin with a handshake. It begins with a chair." Anna grinned. Carla knelt beside her daughter. "Not yet, but one day, this will be yours." Anna nodded. "I'll save them a seat." That night, as the city lay hushed in the chill of late February, Ben remained on the rooftop long after the others had gone. He sat in the lavender chair, now a little worn at the edges, and watched the stars with soft eyes. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a napkin, the first one Carla had ever written. He unfolded it slowly, smoothing the creases. It read, "Your seat is still here, if ready." He whispered, "To no one and everyone. I was. I am." And the rooftop, blanketed in wind and memory, said nothing. Because some answers don't need to be spoken. They just need to be sat in. Spring arrived like a whisper, not a roar. The snow gave way to budding trees and the sidewalks shimmered with fresh rain instead of salt. Everything smelled like beginning. People seemed to walk slower, talk softer, smile longer. The rooftop, once wrapped in layers of blankets and breath clouds, now bloomed with flower pots placed near each chair, some with daffodils, others with mint or lavender. Anna had drawn little flags with names for each one. Mrs. Klein's mint, Elijah's lemon balm, and Ben's chair of second chances. The chairs had stopped being just furniture. They were memories you could sit in. Carla sat beside Thomas one warm evening, watching the last light fade behind the skyline. The rooftop gathering that night had swelled to nearly 30 people. Some had come alone. Others brought friends or neighbors. A few stood along the edges, watching, listening almost, waiting for their moment. "I never imagined this," Carla said, sipping warm tea, "that something so simple could stretch this far." Thomas smiled, but didn't look at her. His eyes were on the city. "It's not simple," he said. "It's sacred. Most people don't get second chances. You've built a place where third and fourth chances don't even need to be earned. They're offered." Carla leaned back. "I didn't build it alone." "No," he said, "but you were the first to sit." Nearby, Anna was helping a new boy, Sammy, age 7, choose a chair. His mother had brought him after seeing an article online. Sammy didn't speak much. but his eyes kept returning to the chair with stars painted on the backrest. "That one?" Anna asked, pointing. Sammy nodded. She held out her hand. "It's all yours." And for the first time that evening, Sammy smiled. That weekend, something unexpected happened. A chair went missing. It wasn't stolen, at least, not in the traditional sense. It was the lavender one, the original almost chair, Ben's chair, the one that had greeted him and so many others with silent welcome. Carla noticed it first. She stood in the middle of the rooftop, scanning each seat twice. Her chest tightened. "It's gone." Thomas checked the stairwell. Elijah looked over the building's edge. Nothing. Then Carla found a note taped to the side of the table. It was written in Ben's careful, slanted handwriting. "It's time this chair moved. Not because it no longer matters, but because someone else needs it more. I'm bringing it to my brother's porch. We haven't spoken in 20 years. But maybe it's time I sat down again. Thank you for letting me remember how." Carla stood holding the note for a long while. The wind picked at her coat. Anna came up beside her and read it quietly. "Is it okay?" Anna asked. Carla exhaled, the tension in her chest loosening. "It's more than okay." She turned to Thomas and smiled. It worked. The next rooftop gathering opened with an empty space where the lavender chair once stood. No one filled it. Not right away. Then Anna placed a blank napkin on the ground in front of the space. She wrote, "Taken by someone who remembered." That night, people took turns sitting in the space around the chair, as if its absence was another kind of presence. They shared stories of reconciliation, of people they hadn't seen in decades, suddenly calling, of emails sent, of hands reached out. Carla watched it all unfold. The healing didn't come in explosions. It came in small, patient ways, like a flower pushing through cracked concrete. Later that month, the Chair Project received an invitation from a small town in Georgia. They had set up their own rooftop, this time above a diner, using mismatched chairs from church basements and school auctions. They called it the tabletop, and every Thursday, people sat and shared one question: "Who haven't you forgiven yet?" Photos poured in. A barber in Detroit built a waiting area with donated chairs painted by kids. A school in Nebraska created a hallway lined with tiny wooden chairs, each one dedicated to a student who felt invisible. An elderly woman in Maine put a single chair on her front lawn with a sign: "Neighbors, this one's for you. Stop by." Carla sat down with Anna that evening and showed her the letters, the photos, the stories. Anna beamed. "It's growing." "It is," Carla said. "Can we visit them?" "One day," she replied. "Maybe we can make a map." A map of all the places with a chair waiting. Anna jumped up and grabbed a pencil. On a large sheet of paper, she drew a heart in the center and wrote, "Home." Then she began to mark dots outward. Carla smiled, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to dream bigger than the rooftop. One evening, when the wind was just right and the air smelled like early summer, a woman appeared at the stairwell door. She wore a faded jean jacket and held a bundle of old papers tied with ribbon. She looked nervous. Anna noticed her first and walked over with a smile. "Hi," she said. "You look like someone who brought a story." The woman blinked, then laughed. "Maybe I did." Carla approached slowly. "Welcome," she said. "First time?" The woman nodded. "Yes. But I think my story started here." She untied the ribbon. Inside were 2 letters. One was the very first anonymous letter, the one that had been slipped under the Room of Echoes door. The other was a new note. "I've walked past too many times. Tonight, I walk in." Carla felt her throat tighten. "We saved your seat," she whispered. The woman smiled. "I know. That night, the circle didn't feel like a gathering. It felt like a culmination. Every chair was filled. Every voice was heard. Ben's chair was gone, but its spirit was everywhere." Carla sat quietly, listening. Thomas leaned over. "You okay?" She nodded. "I think," she said. "This was never about the chairs." He looked puzzled. "What was it about then?" She smiled. "The people who stayed, who came back, who sat down when it was easier to walk away." Thomas looked around the rooftop. He understood. In the end, it had never been about the paint, or the shape, or even the stories written on napkins. It had been about presence. about letting people know they mattered simply because they were. And as the stars blinked above, Anna curled up in a chair, her drawings scattered across her lap. She yawned. "Mommy," she said sleepily. "Do chairs get tired?" Carla wrapped an arm around her and kissed her forehead. "No, sweetheart," she whispered. "Chairs just wait." And so they did. The story of the chair that stayed teaches us a quiet but powerful truth. Sometimes, the most meaningful change begins with simply making space for others, for healing, for stories left untold. Through the image of empty chairs becoming symbols of welcome, forgiveness, and community, we are reminded that true justice and compassion don't always arrive through grand gestures, but through presence, patience, and the courage to sit beside someone in silence. The story shows us that everyone carries invisible burdens, and offering a place to rest without judgment is one of the deepest acts of love we can give. In a world often rushing toward noise and answers, this story invites us to slow down and ask, whose seat are we still saving?